today is Jason Galisatus. I'm so sorry.
Sorry, no one gets it right on the first try. It's
Yeah,
Galisatus.
I practiced. So I want to just preface everything, and I want to start off by kind of addressing the elephant in the room a little bit, because we are the Redwood City Pulse. We're brand new, and a lot of people don't know who we are, what's going on, and this is our first event. Hopefully one of many that we hope to plan or to have in the future regarding a variety of topics. So I do want to just say that, we've gotten questions about what do we plan to do and who's funding us. And to that, I'll just say, well, we're owned by Embarcadero Media. And as far as who's funding us, hopefully you guys, hopefully we will get feedback and we will get support from our community. I want to point out that this project, this new site that we're launching soon is not going to be possible unless we have feedback from our audience, regular feedback. Tell us what you want us to focus on, what matters to you. Tell us what what needs to be highlighted. That's going to be very important, and that's why right now we are doing a webinar on education. So with that, I will just let you guys know that we are going to be taking questions, and those questions will be, if you guys post them in the chat box, we may be able to we will be able to answer them live or talk to you about it later. So I want to introduce our reporter, Leah Worthington. She's going to be my right-hand lady, and she's going to be helping me today field some questions, and she will also be helping us do some really great reporting. We already have some wonderful reports that we are so excited to share with you guys. So with that, I want to start off with our first question to Jason. Jason, thank you so much for being here. You are a rock star. Let me just say that I think Jason is the right person for for our inaugural webinar, because it was confirmed this week. Jason and I have been at like every meeting this week together. Like that was not planned at all. Somehow I went to a meeting and there he was. And so that's why I know that I'm talking to the right person here. So Jason, you're a product of Redwood City Schools, and you grew up here, and now you're helping shape those same schools. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us, your background and what you do.
Well, thanks so much, Michelle. Before I get to the question, I just want to say how excited I am to be with you on your inaugural event. We need local media sources like Redwood City Pulse. You guys are so important to cover what's going on at council, the school board, and the community. And we're so honored that you would ask me to be part of your first event. So thank you for having us. And like you mentioned, I am a product of the Redwood City School District. I went to Clifford for kindergarten through second grade, and then went to North Star for 3rd through 8th. And I had an incredible experience. I learned from really incredible and dedicated teachers. And it really shaped not just who I became, but certainly my perspective of Redwood City. And to be in a position now where I'm giving back to the very district that was so formative to me is really, it's a personal joy and a pleasure. And it's also just an incredible professional challenge as we grapple with some really complex issues that, again, for me, I feel very personally as a product of the Redwood City Schools and as someone who calls Redwood City his hometown.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for that answer. Now, for those who may not know what the Redwood City Education Foundation is, or what you guys do, can you tell us a little bit more about you guys and what your goals, priorities, missions, and how you collaborate with the Redwood City Schools District?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we were formed in 1983 by a group of concerned parents, really in the wake of the Prop 13 tax cuts. So at that time, a number of programs that had been long funded by the school district were beginning to be scaled back because of funding changes at the state level. And so a group of parents got together and said, we're gonna make sure that none of these programs get cut, that our school district can continue to offer a world-class, high-quality education for all students. And so that's where the Redwood City Education Foundation was born. We have evolved since then in many important ways. We've taken a look at our programmatic investments and the way we can best add value to the district and invest in the highest impact possible programs that are going to improve the district the most. And have also changed our funding focus, really targeting our investments towards schools with the highest need within the district.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Now, yesterday you sent us some amazing breaking news, and I'm not gonna say it, but you can go ahead and say it. I'm gonna let you say it. But can you tell us how that amazing thing you're about to say to us will help your foundation, and how is that going to help the community at large?
Absolutely. So we received some really incredible news. I believe I believe early in this year that unfortunately a Redwood City resident had passed away, but she was an incredible person whose generosity knew no bounds. Her name was Violet King. She lived up on Farm Hill Road, and she left us and 3 other nonprofits who served the Peninsula community, especially children-focused nonprofits, the entirety of her estate. So she didn't have heirs, and she decided to give us a bequest, which for us totaled about $1 million. It was the largest gift that we've ever received in our entire history, and it really stands out for the scale of generosity. So we're incredibly generous to the estate of Miss Violet King for this gift, because it is going to absolutely transform our organization and our ability to continue to be a stable source of funding for generations to come. Right now, we are forming a committee that's comprised of representatives of the community, members of the city council, members of the school board, community members at large, to think about how we can best structure this gift to make impact. And right now we're thinking that it's going to be invested in the form of an endowment that will generate returns and revenue for the organization and serve as a perpetual source of financial backing that we can continue to reinvest into our school district. So it's, you know, in the world of education foundations, there can be a lot of twists and turns as far as, you know, the leadership, whether I'm the ED or who's on the board, it changes all the time. And this is going to be able to introduce some long-term stability so that we can continue to be a reliable partner to the district and make the impact that is so needed in perpetuity. So it's a really incredible gift that's, to be honest, just completely game-changing for our organization.
Okay, wonderful. That was great news. I'm still excited about it. Okay, so now the Redwood City Pulse, one of the things that we want to make sure everyone understands is that we are going to be hyper local. So we're going to be covering, you know, Redwood City, Redwood Shores, unincorporated parts of Redwood City, around Redwood City, North Fair Oaks, things like that. And so I wanted to ask you, and I know you mainly focus on the Redwood City School District, but are there any educational issues that are specific to Redwood City?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I think we're an incredibly unique district in that we have such a diverse student population. A lot of districts tend to be one or the other, like they tend to be uniformly well-resourced or uniformly not. And we are in a district that's incredibly diverse that, you know, you can't put a pin on like the average Redwood City student because they're all so different. And the schools also reflect that diversity. And so we have to take a different approach in Redwood City. And so there's a lot of, we are sort of a microcosm for broader issues of educational equity. And yet, so we see a lot of the same issues that you might see in a place like LA Unified or San Francisco Unified, but at a much smaller scale. And to me, that means we have a unique opportunity to identify solutions that can then be replicated at a much larger scale. So to see how these issues of diversity play out, to see how these issues of educational equity play out is really unique. So I'd say that's one side of the coin there. And the other one that I wish, that I want people to know more about is that even the schools that are under-resourced, the schools that are under-resourced punch well above their weight as far as student performance and providing a high quality education. I just remember, we just filmed a documentary along with Bravemaker Film Fest, and it was called La Familia y la Comunidad. And we had a conversation with the principal of Garfield. Her name's Lupe Calillo Torres. And she told a story about how during the pandemic, one of the students that had attended her school wasn't showing up to the Zoom class. I was going to say wasn't showing up to class, wasn't showing up to Zoom, wasn't engaged at all. The teachers didn't really know what was going on. And she personally visited the house of that student. The principal of the school visited the house of that student, knocked on the door and said, hey, I know there's a lot going on, but we've got to make sure that you're getting this education. She took her to the school campus, provided her with a safe place to work, and all of a sudden she became more engaged. And so these are the types of stories that we don't hear about. I mean, there's a plethora. I mean, I could talk ad nauseum about the challenges that we're facing, but what people really, I wish people would know more about is how dedicated our school staff members are, and frankly, the miracles that they work every single day just doing their job.
Wow. So I want to talk a little bit more about the diversity in the school district. It seems to be that there is a big diverse population of different ethnicities and heritages in Redwood City. Well, and you touched a little bit on mental health. So I want to ask you, do you see disparities between, mental health and these type of people who may be underrepresented, especially in these minority groups that we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So just for context, Redwood City is a majority minority city, meaning that the majority of the population is non-white. So we are a very diverse community. And that's magnified even further in the school district because our boundaries also include communities like North Fair Oaks. And so I believe about 70% of our district is Latino. And so we're an incredibly diverse district. And we do see disparities, unfortunately. We don't have a lot of hyper-localized data that gets into mental health needs, but we do know from nationalized data and from news stories that you see that, that students of color do tend to be disproportionately affected by the pandemic and by mental health and sort of accordingly mental health challenges. Because a lot of their families tend to be working in the service industry or other heavily impacted industries and had suffered tremendous financial losses during the pandemic. And, we think about education as we call it the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which basically means that if your base sense of security, your base sense of, housing security, food insecurity, mental wellness is not taken care of, that your ability to learn is drastically impacted. So, and it makes sense. That's the research, but also it makes sense intuitively. Like if you're going to school and you're worried about, is my family going to have somewhere to live tomorrow? Or where's my next meal going to come from? How can you possibly learn? And, when that is all you can think about. And so we do see that playing out in our district. And that's why we launched the COVID-19 Family Relief Fund just hours after the district announced that it would be shifting to distance learning, because we knew that, if we're here to support academic performance of students, there was no way we were going to achieve that without first taking care of students' fundamental needs, and that includes mental health.
That's good. Okay. I want to ask you, last week, Governor Newsom issued a mandate regarding, the mandatory vaccination of children, school-age children. What impact do you think that's going to have locally for parents, the school district, students?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert in this field, so just caveating just with that caveat, but I certainly hope and believe that it will make all parties safer and take the risk out of going to school. I know that the district has done a tremendous job at controlling infections. They certainly have happened, but they respond extremely fast and they're able to contact trace and notify everyone who is able to come into contact. And of course, we know by the science that vaccines do reduce the risk of transmission of COVID-19. And so hopefully that will just reduce those cases and reduce the interruptions on the school day, because every time a kid is taken out of the classroom, it is a disruption in the learning, and it does affect their academic career. So we want to minimize that as much as possible. So bottom line, and I also know that there's indoor masking requirements that are dependent on level of community spread and level of vaccinations. So, I think the bottom line remains the same, which is, wear a mask, get vaccinated, do the things we're all supposed to do. And hopefully we can, again, reduce these disruptions in students' education.
Okay. And just kind of like in that same vein, I wanted to ask you about the COVID situation in Redwood City schools, primarily the type of things that the school district, or the things that you guys help the school district with. What are you guys doing? What is the school district doing in helping to prevent the spread of COVID?
Yeah. So the district has done a tremendous job at preparing for the return to in-person instruction. So they're very stocked up on PPE. They take all the precautions that are established by the state to minimize potential infections. And again, like I said, they do a great job of responding. I believe that they're doing the rapid testing of COVID very frequently, so that they're able to track potential infections. But as far as what we're doing, the district, I have to say, has done a really great job at sort of the funding needs around COVID safety. So we haven't played so much of a direct role in providing the PPE and things like that. Where we saw our role is providing financial resources to families who were impacted. So we play less of a role in the health and physical safety of students. That's really the district's responsibility. But we take care of the whole child. So like I said, we do provided financial assistance and continue even today to make referrals to families who are seeking financial help, so that again, their home life is a little more stable, and so that their child is in the best position to be able to learn.
Good. I thank you for that answer. I do want to remind our audience that we are taking questions. So if you have a question that may be something we haven't touched on, or something that you are just curious to know, feel free to put that in the chat. We also have a Q&A section that we're looking at, and I believe this is also being streamed live on Facebook. So if you're watching us there, go ahead and type a question and we will see it and we will do our best to answer it. So you have that option. Okay, so I want to continue on, and I want to just ask you about something that you may have said, or that you did say at the 2020 virtual event, the Brave Maker Film Fest. You said that the foundation realized that it couldn't provide equal support across the board to all schools, and you'd much rather focus heavily on schools that have acute needs. Can you tell us a little bit about why you believe that, why you chose to do that, and now how are you targeting those schools and helping it and putting those investments in there.
Yeah, this is a major, major paradigm shift for us where we completely changed how we do business and kind of breaking with decades of precedent that our organization had been operating under. The saying, a rising tide lifts all ships. And I think that's true, but only true if there aren't holes in the ship that cause it to continue to sink. And I think that's where we were at, and that there are students with tremendous needs that are far outside that of what many students in our district experience. We're talking about students who have recently immigrated to this country. We're talking about students who may be facing homelessness, and we're talking about students who struggle with economic security in an area that's extremely high cost. So the need is so much greater at certain schools. And yet at the same time, the private fundraising that was available to meet that need just wasn't there. So if we look at a school like schools like North Star and Cloud, they have really high functioning, well-performing PTOs that used to raise more than RCEF did for the entire district. Whereas at the schools that we fund now, Hoover, Garfield, and Taft, there didn't even exist any PTO organization that was raising private funds for them. There were other private fundraising sources, but not sort of that dedicated school site level fundraising organizations that you see at other schools. And so we thought to ourselves, given the fact that we have very limited resources, right? We're not. I wish we're not just a spring of endless cash. We had to make very difficult decisions about how we can invest that money strategically and for the maximum impact. And at the end of the day, that's our duty as a nonprofit. That's our expertise. And that's the promise that we make to our donors, that we're going to steward your funds in such a way that gets the highest impact for your hard-earned dollars that you gave in the form of a donation. And so we went through a long process, a lot of soul searching. It was a couple of years before we arrived at that point. And really that principle was first applied through the COVID-19 Relief Fund. And we saw record numbers of donations. We raised over $500,000 in that effort, which was more than we had ever raised in a single campaign before. So we took a bold stance. We said, this is what we're about. And we're so grateful that the Redwood City community has responded positively to this change.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, what was the response from the community and how did they support you in that decision? Or was there any pushback, I would say?
Yeah, I mean, I think any time that we're going to have change is going to be tough. I mean, like I said, we were working with precedent that had been in place since 1983. So it's certainly a big shift, and along with big shift, there's going to be concern. But I will say that we made this decision very deliberately with lots of community input. We did a lot of community outreach with folks, and just to try to hear their concerns and explain why we were thinking about this in the first place, so that by the time the decision came around, folks kind of understood why, and again, I do think that the need kind of speaks for itself in many respects. And certainly, we are focusing on funding 3 schools, and that is largely because of resource constraint. But as we continue to grow as an organization, I believe that the goal would be to extend resources to more schools than we currently fund now, once we've achieved sort of the level of fundraising to where we know we're making a deep impact and not a shallow one across multiple theaters.
Okay, great. Now I want to give opportunity to the attendees. Leah, are there any questions from our audience that we maybe not have addressed?
Hello, yes, we've got a few questions lined up, so I'm just going to go chronologically. Starting with, we have a question from someone, which is, why does the Redwood City School District have school of choice?
Yeah, so we actually have a mix. So we have some neighborhood schools and some that are community choice. And I can't speak for the district as to why it has this policy, but I believe that the idea was to, as sort of the title might suggest, give more choices to families when selecting a school. Our school district faces stiff competition, right? We're not the only show in town, right? You've got charter schools, you've got private schools, and I think the district wanted to offer options to families to make the best choice for their child. And again, I can't speak for them, but that's my understanding.
Great, thank you. We've got another question from Brooks Esser. Brooks wants to know if you could talk a little bit about the charter of the foundation vis-a-vis the Redwood City School Board and how the two organizations work together.
It's a great question. We are an independent 501c3 organization, and so we act completely independently from the school district. That said, we have a very close partnership, right? We provide the funding, but we don't run programs ourselves. And so we really rely on the district to carry out the programs for which we fundraise. And so the district is a very close partner of ours, and we want to make sure that our work is aligned with theirs. Superintendent Dr. Baker is on our board, which is he's an incredible asset and incredible resource to us, with so much knowledge about what's going on in the district, and make sure that both from a strategic and just day-to-day operational standpoint, we're aligned with the work that the district is doing and not stepping on toes.
Okay, great, thank you. We have, our next question is, how many children go to North Star from each school in the district? And is it skewed towards children from Roy Cloud and Clifford rather than distributed across all the schools?
I honestly can't answer that question. I'm sorry. I wish I had that in front of me, but I don't have that information on me.
That's fine. I figure a few of these you might not be able to answer, and that's no problem.
Yeah,
Good
we're not
questions,
gonna hold you to like having all that stuff in your head or remembering everything.
But
Okay.
folks, if folks do have questions, they certainly can email me at jgalisatus@rcef.org, or you can also, certainly email the district as well.
Yeah, could one of the panelists or moderators, could you guys put that contact information inside the chat box so that everyone can see that? Thank you. Okay, so I want to continue on, and I do have some other questions for you. I want to ask you about, we kind of touched a little bit about this, but what resources do you wish more parents knew about that you guys, may be able to help them with at both high and low performing schools? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, our community is very lucky to have some incredible community organizations that provide programming for kids. So I know that youth and families, children and families is a core council is the core priority for the city council. So they really put a lot of time and effort in developing amazing programming for youth. So for example, the Parks and Recs department does summer camps. There's organizations like Casa Círculo Cultural and PAL, the Police Activities League, that offer after-school programs. Just so many incredible resources out there for all students. And then in particular, I also want to emphasize some resources that really are geared towards families who are struggling financially. So any parent who's in the Redwood City School District who needs help, who needs additional resources, should visit their community school coordinator because they are incredible folks whose job it is to connect their families with outside resources to, again, supplement the academic mission of the school by taking care of some of their essential needs. So they're incredibly knowledgeable about what resources are out there. They can connect families to emergency rental assistance. They can connect them with gift cards to help them, purchase certain essential needs, goods. They are sort of a one-stop shop for any parent seeking resources for themselves or for their children. So any parent who needs support, I would say that should be your number one call. And of course, we're also happy to connect families to resources as well.
Okay, good. Leah, there was a question in the Q&A about Spanish speaking parents. And I believe Jason mentioned that the school district is made up of, I want to say, the majority of Latino families. Leah, can you go ahead and read that question, and then we can talk about that?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. So an attendee wants to know, how do parents, especially those who only speak Spanish, keep well informed on local school issues? And what role does the foundation play in communicating with these parents?
Great question. So our district does a really good job of making sure to translate every single document that goes out and conduct the meetings in a bilingual or even a monolingual Spanish format. So every school board meeting is translated into Spanish, and that's a great resource for parents to know what's going on. At the school level, there are regular meetings that happen, which they call cafecitos, and they're really amazing ways for parents to connect directly with the principal to know what's going on at the school site. And as for us, I'm really excited because this is really an area that we're growing in and really exploring in. For example, we've created a diversity, equity, inclusion committee like many nonprofits, but we actually hold that meeting in Spanish. So we conduct that meeting in Spanish with a very intent of making it as accessible to folks as possible. We're also in the process of recruiting parents to our board who are from Hoover, Garfield, and Taft. So if you're from there, email me, please. And in order to make our board meetings accessible as well, we're going to begin translating those as well. So we want to lower as many barriers to participation as possible, and that does start with language.
And I want to just, take this opportunity now to say that the Redwood City Pulse is also going to be trying to get help out and write articles in Spanish. And you're going to have in the coming weeks that we're going to have a Spanish language newsletter. So a lot of the information that we're getting from the school districts and from the city government, we hope to have on our website and free information, free resources for our community that is primarily Spanish speaking. So that's something that we're hoping to launch in the next little bit. So I want to ask you another question about what do you think are some of the biggest strengths of Redwood City schools, the parents, the teachers, the students? What do you think those strengths are and why?
Yeah. So the culture of Redwood City is an incredible bonus, is an incredible asset that we have. I remember when in my days of attending North Star, how involved parents were, like just even the smallest things of like parents hot gluing together costumes for the school play, right? Just there was a sense that, it's an all hands on deck job to raise the next generation of leaders. And I think that spirit is alive and well today. I see it on my board, all the time. I see it, every time I work with parents, just this sort of collective dedication to making sure that our kids are good, right? And then I'd say the other major asset is our diversity in our Latino community. There is an incredible wealth of potential and opportunity in these young kids, and of course all kids as well, but really focusing on a community that may be overlooked. Sometimes they offer so much to this district and to this world, and I see them as an incredible resource and just not resource, but incredible treasure to be nurtured and elevated.
So I think I have one more question for you, or yeah. But I wanted to ask our moderators if you guys can tell me how much more time we have and whether we have any more time for questions after that. But the question that I wanted to ask you is about a local parcel tax that didn't pass in 2019. So tell us a little bit about local tax revenue. Why is it important? What do you want the public to know about that? And what are the barriers for this parcel tax to get this to pass?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So parcel taxes are extremely difficult to pass in the state of California. They require a supermajority in order to pass. And RCEF led the charge in 2019 to try to get a parcel tax approved, which would have given a little over $3 million each year to reduce class sizes throughout the Redwood City School District. And it failed by just dozens of votes, literally dozens of votes. It was so close. So one barrier is the high threshold that needs to be raised. And our former Senator Jerry Hill would always carry a bill that would have lowered that threshold to a simple majority, which to me makes a whole lot of sense. If most people want this, they should be able to have it. But unfortunately, it hasn't passed yet. So I think that would be an incredible step. Unfortunately, in the state of California, these measures are probably the best ways to raise local revenue for schools. We have not seen major increases in funding. The governor did have an incredible COVID-related package for schools, which was great, but it is short-term in nature, and we really do need long-term reforms. So we need parcel taxes because they are the only way that we can get the resources we need. That over 3 million, we're raising over $1 million now every year, but that's just doesn't come anywhere. The amount of resources we can raise through parcel taxes doesn't even come close to what, to the relatively small amount that we're raising on the private philanthropic side. And Redwood City's parcel taxes are far, far lower than our neighboring jurisdictions. They're lower than San Carlos, than Menlo Park, than Palo Alto, you name it. We're lower than just about, all of our surrounding districts. And that puts our kids at a particular disadvantage because they all go to the same high school. And it just means that Redwood City students are going to be starting behind if we don't start making some serious investments in our schools.
How can parents and the community help with that? Tell us a little bit about that and what we can do as a community.
If and when we go out for another parcel tax, we need you to volunteer. We need you to talk to your fellow parents and make sure that they turn out to vote and vote yes for school funding measures. I know that sometimes people have challenged, like there's always some concern that people have with the district. The district is doing this, they're not doing that. But denying them funding is not going to solve any of those problems. And so what I would say is when the time comes, we need you to be active. We need you to join our phone banks. We need you to email your friends, donate to the campaigns, because these campaigns at the hyper local level, a single person really can swing the outcome. Like I said, this last parcel tax measure lost by just dozens of votes. So 1 or 2 or 3 or maybe 4 more dedicated volunteers very well could have tipped the scale, or just, those few dozen people voting yes, or deciding to vote instead of staying home. So at the local level, and especially when we need such a high threshold to pass, every single little action helps. So believe me, you will hear from us when we go out for another parcel tax. And we will be telling you all the many ways that you can contribute to a victory.
Awesome, thanks for that. Leah, are there any more questions from the audience? I want to start wrapping up, but I know everyone is probably really busy and has a great Thursday planned. So Leah, can you just let us know what questions we have?
Yeah, we've got a couple more questions. There was a question regarding retention at the Redwood City School District and wondering whether you know if any students have been retained.
Yeah, okay, so it's student retention, not teacher retention. I do know we have had some attrition from the student population, but really we're not seeing a mass exodus from the Redwood City School District. So that's very, very good news. Many students have chosen and families have chosen to stay with our district. And I will say our district has been incredible in their COVID response. Has done a fantastic job. And that's probably why we haven't seen a mass exodus from our district. And then sorry, was there another question or?
Yeah, thank you for that. There's a question about enrollment trends and whether you're able to speak to if they're increasing, decreasing, or stable. And also adding on to that, if gentrification is impacting enrollment, and if so, how?
Yeah, so the long-term trajectory is that our enrollment is declining. And that used to be bad news, like very bad news for the district because we are funded per pupil by the state, but actually we changed the way that we used to be a basic aid district. Oh, sorry, now I'm trying to remember the difference between them. Essentially, now we are funded by our local property taxes and not from the state, and that actually means that we have higher levels of per pupil funding than the base level of the state. And it's a very complicated formula, but the basic idea is that actually we want to keep our enrollment numbers relatively low, because if we keep raising them, then we will go back to being funded by the state, which means we'll only receive the bare minimum. So the enrollment trends used to be a big concern for us, or for me, I'll say, but now they have it is working in our favor as our property tax base has continued to grow. So yeah, it's a very complicated formula, but we actually are doing pretty well in that regard. It's working in our favor for once.
Okay, good to know. I think there's one more question, and then I want to see if there are any people on Facebook that have any questions. I don't know if that's something we can see. But Leo, what was the last question? And then we can start wrapping up here, Jason.
Yeah, well, there's one more question in the Q&A, and then I have one question if you'd be willing to answer. So the question in the Q&A, it's sort of following up on the school choice topic that we brought up earlier, but to kind of rephrase and see if you might be able to speak to this at all. If the district decided to discontinue school choice options, I'm wondering whether you have thoughts on how schools, teachers, students would be affected, and also Michelle, if you wanted to talk at all about how we might be able to cover that sort of conversation in our publication.
Sure.
So to my knowledge, there are no immediate plans to end school choice. I do believe that the district is engaging in conversations about how it can be equitable and kind of evaluating its approach to equity and school access. So I know that it's a conversation that's ongoing. I'm not intimately familiar with the details of where that's at.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, did you want to say something, Michelle?
No, I just wanted to say that, I think that the Redwood City Pulse is really going to go into all the issues. And that's why I think events like this are incredibly important, because there are things that I may not have even considered to get into. And, for me specifically, Leah, you are a native here, so you're better off. But for me personally, this is a learning curve, and I'm going to be completely honest, but I am incredibly excited to be able to explore these issues and to answer them and to write about them to the best of my ability.
We're excited too, Michelle.
Thank you. Okay,
can I ask one question that I have? I'll be quick, but you know, in this recent donation, I know that some of the funds are going to support social emotional support programs, and this is something that I've had conversations with teachers in the district about feeling like this is the time of year when they get really burnt out, and it's only exacerbated by having been remote for so long and now jumping back into the classroom. And I know that behavioral issues among kids have been a particular problem with just, you know, not having had the experience of being in the physical classroom for so long. Some teachers have said something to the effect of, we forgot how to be in school. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little to what kind of support you're hoping to provide to the district.
It's a great question. And, you know, I don't blame them, right? I'm having a hard enough time readjusting to normal life. So I feel their pain, and I can only imagine being a kid where it's such an important time in your development, and it's just incredibly challenging. So what they're saying is very real. Students are struggling with mental health. They are struggling with their social emotional learning. We know that students, we've conducted an analysis called the developmental asset profile with our partner One Life Counseling, and definitely found that students were feeling isolated, not connected to their peers or broader community, and really, really struggling. And so this has been an area that we know we need to work on. And so we launched actually a counselor pilot program at Garfield, where we hired one full-time counselor from One Life Counseling, and her name's Naomi, and she's an incredible asset to that school community. And she works really well with the administrative team. She has a wait list, for her time, so she's clearly in demand. And she was so successful that we decided to expand that program in this year. So now we have one full-time counselor from One Life Counseling at Hoover, Garfield, and Taft. So one each at each of those school sites. And really, we look at mental health as sort of 3 tiers. So tier 3 is like a very small, and it's a pyramid. The tier 3 at the top is very, very extreme cases. They're contemplating self-harm, and there's abuse in the home, really grave situations like that. There's tier 2 where it might not be an emergency, but they need additional support. They need a caring and supportive adult to talk to, who's a professional, to help them work through their feelings. That's really where the counselors come in. And where we hope to expand our work in the future is tier 1, which is where we're not just focusing on the extreme cases. We're not just focusing on the kids who need a bit of extra help. We're focusing on all students, because we believe that learning, that social emotional learning, should be built in to the core curriculum, right? And learning how to process your feelings and communicate. This is something that all students would benefit from from learning about when they are, again, at this very critical stage of their development. So that's really the next, area that we hope to focus on. And we are seeing some very exciting proposals that we hope to be able to fund in the following school year.
Great. Leah, did you have a follow-up, or did you have another question?
No, that was really great. Thank you so much.
Great question. Thanks, Leah.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to go ahead and wrap up. Are there any final comments or things that you feel people should know that are coming up, or anything?
Yeah, I would just say the Redwood City schools are incredible. We have an incredible community. Everyone is so dedicated to the mission of educating students. And I've seen folks working miracles at all levels of the school community, from the folks in the district office to principals, teachers, support staff, and parents. Everyone has this collective and singular focus on giving the best education to students. And our role is really to help facilitate that and marshal the broader resources of the Redwood City community and target them towards the areas of greatest need within the school district. And we do hope that the entire community will be a partner with us. That's the Redwood City I have always known growing up, and I know that spirit is alive and well today. So, but thank you, Michelle, for having me. And again, congratulations on launching this new publication. We're so excited and grateful to have local coverage like yours.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for being with us. It was a very informational webinar, and I know that it's over, but the conversation isn't over. So Jason put his contact information in there. My contact information, I can give you that email, or we can also include it at the bottom. I love community feedback. I love taking phone calls. I'm very accessible. Maybe too accessible, but yeah, just if you have questions for me, you have questions for the Redwood City team, for our parent company, reach out to me. I really want to hear from you. I really want you guys to tell us what we need to be doing, what we need to be covering. So with that, I want to thank everybody who showed up, and those I'm watching on Facebook, everyone here. We can't do this. We can't do this without you guys. So appreciate all of you, and thank you so much. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Bye.